Hello, I am Bert Janssen. Welcome back to the series of short videos in which I explain the book, The Organizing Principle, There Are No Coincidences. In the previous video, we have seen how squaring the circle, the shape of spirit, can subliminally, meaning below the threshold of conscious awareness, induce absolute knowledge to stream from the unconscious in the conscious, leading to us experiencing premonition, precognition, remote viewing, all non-physical processes connected to our mind. But it can also become really physical and tangible. Let's have another look at Jung's mandalas. As we have seen, these mandalas are not inventions of the conscious mind. They have a reality of their own. They are authentic expressions of the unconscious mind, while at the same time there is also a non-physical stream from the unconscious into the conscious. Jung's patients, for instance, were feeling very depressed and had very negative thoughts, which are non-physical processes. In these cases, the personal unconscious expressed itself in a non-physical aspect by means of feelings and thoughts, and a physical aspect by means of painted mandalas. With synchronicities, something similar is happening, although here it is taken to the next level. You think of a friend, which is a non-physical activity. Minutes later, this friend calls, which is a physical activity. For this to be a synchronistic event, both the non-physical and the physical have to happen. And when it does, it results in a so-called Complexio Oppositorum, a unity of opposites. All synchronistic events are unities of opposites. The unity of opposites defines a situation in which the existence of a thing, in this case a synchronicity, depends on the coexistence of two conditions that are opposite. In this case, non-physical and physical, but that are simultaneously interdependent and presume one another. We are dealing with a unity of opposites, with something like the nature of light. Under certain conditions, light behaves like particles, while under other conditions, light behaves like waves, while in its essence it is both at the same time. Squaring the circle is another example of a Complexio Oppositorum. We all know that a circle is not a square, and a square is not a circle. Still, squaring the circle is both at the same time. A better way to express squaring the circle would be But this is still far from perfect. Let's refocus on synchronistic events, which are both physical and non-physical at the same time. Jung writes, "It is not only possible, but fairly probable even, that psyche and matter are two different aspects of one and the same thing." Let that sink in for a minute. Psyche and matter are two different aspects of one and the same thing. Psyche and matter are one thing, expressing itself sometimes non-physically, feelings, thoughts, sometimes physically, matter, and sometimes both. The latter we call synchronistic events, events with a physical and non-physical component. The functioning and workings of this one thing from which these events originate is organized and regulated by what I call the organizing principle. With synchronicities, this organizing principle is responsible for the simultaneously happening of the non-physical and physical events. And because of this, they are meaningful connected. Simultaneously does not mean that we experience these two events at the same time or at the same place. These events are actually not held by space and time. A beautiful example of this is the card experiment of J.B. Rhine. The subject thinks of a card, a non-physical event. The card is drawn, a physical event. Although it looks like these two events are separate, they are actually not. They are one thing expressing itself as a non-physical event and a physical event. This process, which is regulated by the organizing principle, is not held by space or time. The order of the casting of the cards and the drawing of the cards is not relevant. And also the physical distance between the casting and the drawing is not relevant. The only thing relevant is that both events are connected and they originate from the very same thing. It is very much like thinking of a friend, a non-physical activity, and the friend calling, a physical activity. Both activities, the non-physical and the physical, originate from one and the same thing. As already mentioned before, all cases of premonition, of precognition, of remote viewing are occurrences of synchronicity. The experiencing of premonition, or precognition, remote viewing, and the events you have the premonition, precognition, and remote viewing about, both originate from one and the same thing. the non-physical aspects and the physical aspects of premonition, precognition, remote viewing are connected, but they are not held by space or time. Let's have a look at a few examples. The event of Swedenborg, while he was in Göteborg, having a vision, which is a non-physical activity, a vision of a fire, a physical event, a fire raging in Stockholm, which was nearly 500 kilometers away, is an example where space was not relevant. Me seeing the future, precognition, a non-physical activity, a future in which a man sitting on the sidewalk in Marlborough, England, would show me photos of crop circles, which he actually later did, a physical event, is an example where time was not relevant. And Rhine's experiments with the Zener cards, whereby the subject first had to cast the cards, a non-physical activity, and only 2 weeks later and many miles away the cards would be drawn, a physical activity, is an example whereby both time and space were not relevant. Much more difficult to grasp is the situation whereby a non-physical activity in the present, in the now, has a physical impact in the past. In a future video, I will show an example of this apparent impossibility. All these examples are orchestrated and directed by the organizing principle. Realizing how this mechanism works opens the door to unthought of possibilities. But to make these possibilities become realities depends on you. I see you in the next video.